Yeah, you have much bigger problems if you're melting metals, but it's not in a refinery. That is a mistake that you are going to pay for. I will insulate it, I suppose. Sure, let's bring that out. Now, I'll probably set up a little pump or something over here just to take some stuff in. Now, there's all sorts of things you can do with this as well, by the way. You could fill this, for example. I've seen people use steam rooms like this to purify their water. Like I've got a much more complicated system over here where this water is potentially germy. It isn't at the moment, but it could be. Well, actually, is it? Oh no, it's got some food poisoning germs. They're decreasing though because it hasn't had a delivery of polluted water in a long time because it doesn't need it, so it's shutting that down. So as a result, no new germs are being delivered, so they're dying off slowly. But that liquid comes up here. Some of it is sent over here. It's used as grey water. You know, people wash their hands with the germy water and somehow don't get more germy. Don't ask questions. I don't. I've learned not to. The rest of it is filtered out all over the place. It comes over here, and then it'll go off there, though, for those interested. The wastewater, the water that doesn't have anywhere more important to be, comes down here and operates my oil geysers. But it goes up here, filters up, and then gets pulled into this system occasionally. Now, this one's actually run by a bit of automation. So this is set to be turned on only with this set and reset switch. And this is dictated by this tank. Basically, this tank will accept liquid until it's at 90% capacity, and then it sends a signal to stop accepting this liquid. This flicks the signal to whatever is the opposite. And I believe this is the reset the reset condition. If this is receiving a true signal, then this will always be outputting a red signal. If this is receiving anything other than a true signal, a green signal, doesn't change. It doesn't have any effect on the state of this. So at that point, this becomes whatever this is. If both of these were red, then this is red. If both of these were green, this is red. If only this is green, then this is green. You can think of it like that. So if this is said, yeah, I've got 90% capacity, sends a green signal, this gets flipped to red, so it stops affecting it. This turns green, this turns green. If it's at 90, it sends a red signal. If it's empty, it sends a green signal, so it lets liquid through. Until it gets to 90, and then it sends a red signal, flips this to green, which forces this to be red no matter what else is going on. So that stops allowing any more polluted liquid into the system. This room is completely filled with chlorine gas, which is a very unwelcoming environment for any kind of germs. It basically sterilizes them. They die incredibly quickly in a chlorine environment. Now, I stop it accepting liquid at 90% so that there's always a little bit of room because I want this liquid constantly cycling through this system. And as you can see here, the liquid is cycling forever. Right now, all of this liquid is completely germ-free. It's being used up slowly, so it hasn't emptied this system and hasn't needed to refill for a long time. But let's assume that this was fresh, germy water. It would continually cycle around here because there's a little bit of room in here, so there's basically suction. You can think of it like that. So it's basically a continuous... Try to suspend disbelief for a moment because it is perpetual motion. But it's okay. Let's just move on. But this liquid will constantly cycle through the system. And while it's in this chlorine, the germs are dying at an alarming rate. Well, for the germs. For us, it's pretty comforting. But for the germs, super alarming. Once this starts detecting that there's no germs in the liquid that's passing over it, it says that this gate, this valve can open. And so the germy water starts trying to, the germ-free water starts trying to leave. Once all of the water in the system is drained, this sends the signal saying, yeah, send in more water and we'll start the purification process. This happens very quickly because of the chlorine. You could just wait it out. It would work. It's just, it would take a long time. For example, there's some food poisoning germs in this water, but that water has been there now for so long because this has been using it so slowly that probably the next several cycles of this will have no germs in it because the germs will have died in the water while they were waiting. Germs can't survive in clean water. They don't die very quickly. They don't breed. They breed in polluted water. You will never run out of germs in polluted water. It'll just get more and more and more germy forever. But in clean water, very slowly die off because they're not breeding anymore. Right, now we had a couple of sub sounds there. Supernova, thank you very much for the 28 months. And Alex Speed, thank you very much for the Prime sub. Thank you very, very much. You only have one of those to use and you decided to use it here. That was very kind of you. Diolch yn fawr. May have to go adult to be responsible. I'll be back in a bit. Take care, Enan. While steam engines are the easiest heat to deletion, it's far from the only. Desalinators and apparently outhouses start deleting heat when input is above a certain point due to the output always being... Yeah, anything that has a... like... I strongly suspect that you should avoid getting too comfortable with any building that outputs any kind of item at a set temperature. Because the devs seem to be actively removing those as they find them. Almost everything its output material at a set temperature initially. But certain things, it was an amazing way of deleting heat by using that. So now you have to be very careful with it. Anything that you find that does that, if it becomes widely known, it's probably not going to be doing it for very long. That's my warning there. But yeah, there are still a couple of items now that do output its output material at a set temperature. Outhouses are a good one. You can basically delete heat with poop. You can also delete heat from things that consume the item immediately. Let me find it. There. My hydrogen generator. If you send the generator exactly enough to run, never enough to start stockpiling, then you can delete the heat of that hydrogen. No matter how hot the hydrogen is, as it goes in the tick that it gets accepted into the generator, if the generator only has exactly enough to run, it'll immediately start to run and delete the hydrogen without ever gaining the heat from the hydrogen that entered it. But if hydrogen is stored, which is this green bar here, then while it's being stored in the generator for use later, it's equalizing its temperature, and the generator is getting hotter over time. But that's one way you can delete heat, is have a hydrogen generator, and hydrogen is a really good gas for this, by the way, because it's so thermally reactive, and pump hydrogen gas through a hot area, let it soak up the heat, then trickle it into a bank of generators, and it gets rid of the heat. It's a very useful way of doing it. Spectre Grim, thank you very much for the 5 months, mate. Prime sub for the Dapper Lord. Diolch yn fawr, buddy. Thank you. The Ice Maker deletes heat extremely slowly. But yeah, that's another one that does as well. But yeah, so, you know, that's a bunch of stuff that's going on. Now, do I want to fill this with hydrogen? Kind of do, kind of don't. Honestly, I can just run a coolant through here and it'll do the same thing. It'll do the same thing if I run the coolant. Now, the way this is going to work, hot liquids come in this side, goes through, if it doesn't need to activate, if it's below 0 degrees, then the aqua tuner won't turn on, so it won't try to cool and it'll just exit the system. However, if it is over 0 degrees, then this will turn on, it'll accept the liquid, and then it'll cool it and output it over here. At that point, it checks again. Is it still above 0 degrees? If so, it enters the system again. And at that point, it goes back out. Now, what I could do is I could add a final check. And the final check would make sure that if it wasn't yet below 0 degrees, that it goes straight back through again and keeps going through until such a time that it is below 0 degrees, and then it gets let out. That would make... There is a problem with that. Because rather than applying a little bit of cooling to all of the liquid in the system, you'd be applying a lot of cooling to some of the liquid in bursts. And so the liquid that isn't being cooled would basically be having to wait, and the whole system would slow down. And the cooling loop kind of relies on movement. That's how I think of it anyway. Good day, Barash Kambachi. How you doing, mate? Hope you're doing well. Alright, but it's high time that we get this sorted. So now we've got all of this done. It's time for us to build a proper transformer. This can be whatever real temperature we want. I can add a little... Oh, that's lead, not gold. Tungsten, I guess. You know what, copper is fine. Pop one there, pop one there. There we go. Now, very much like this wire to come straight up and connect. And this wire come straight up and connect. And then this very bulky wire over here comes straight down. I'm sure it's being made out of copper. Connect to both of these. This will provide power to the system. Yeah, it would bottleneck, exactly, Spectrum. I mean, depending on the way you use bridges, you can give certain liquids a priority. So, for example, the way I would do it is instead of having the sensor check if it's above 0, and if it is, send it this way, it would check if it's below 1 degree. And if it's not, it automatically gets sent this way. It only gets let out actively. That's the way I would typically wire a system, is that to get let out, it has to qualify. Rather than to get put back through the system, it has to qualify. Because that way, you prevent for example, if there wasn't any room to send the liquid this way, like I had a valve here that was checking the temperature and it was above 0 degrees, so it should be sent this way, but there wasn't any room, well then it would just be allowed through. I wouldn't want that. I would want it to only get through if it had passed the test, not if it had passed the test or if there wasn't any room for it to be sent the way it should go. So it all comes down to the order in which you set up the system. Now you could wire it like that, but I think honestly just applying 2 aquatuners worth of cooling, eventually it'll sort the problem out no matter what. No matter what, it'll eventually get dealt with. I think that's all we need to do in here, honestly. So at this point, deconstruct this door, please. We are about to sort this out. Don't do that, come on. Most of the areas are going to have buffer tanks. I'm quite a fan of the buffer tanks, especially now that they are hooked up to the automation system. We will be doing something along those lines, don't you worry. Right, could you please sweep this as a super high priority, because I do not want any random junk in here. Please and thank you. And then likewise, we'll completely shut this down. Everything in here that can overheat is made out of steel. And we are not going to be operating this steam room at any kind of temperature that's going to challenge a steel anything. So we're going to be fine with that. Oh my good lord. Brutus Salazar. You are a scholar and a gentleman. Also, quite a badass Cataclysm character. Thank you so much for that enormous 20 sub gift bomb. That just... wow. Thank you so very much for that. That is incredible. Diolch yn fawr, mate. Thank you so much. Please put plenty of love in chat right now, because that was an enormous amount of support. Diolch yn fawr. I blame the Gestalt consciousness and bad decisions in Cataclysm. Oh, marvelous. Right, let's get all of this built as quick as we can, please. I want that room sealed off, and then I'm going to turn on the pump. Once that's completely vacuumed out, I can start introducing some water. I can eat, well, before. Okay, here's the thing. I can automate it, and because I can automate it, I'm going to automate it. You understand how it works. First, I need to check how much volume of gas can a steam turbine use. Okay, draws in steam from the tiles below. How much can it use, though? How much can it pull through? Does it say? No, it doesn't. Oh, well, that's annoying. Okay, chat, could you let me know how much steam, volume of steam, a steam turbine can work with? I know it's like thermally capped. It's got a minimum of 120 degrees, I believe, and a maximum of 200 degrees, I think. On that note, thermosensor, please and thank you. This does not overheat, so I'll make it out of copper. This can live right there. Punk. Actually, it can live there if I want. I can have it right underneath. You know what? I'll have it right underneath. Automation wire made out of copper going straight up. I only want this turning on if this room is hot enough for it to work. 25-ish for each intake. 25 watt. Oh, 200 grams, I take it? It can take... Like, I know about heat. But what I was asking is how much volume can it process per tick? How much volume of gas? Because I'm going to have an Atmos sensor in here and a liquid sensor. Or mostly, realistically, I'm going to have an Atmos sensor. I guess I don't need anything else than that. No, I will need both. If I'm going to set it up properly, I'm going to need both. Because in the initial setup, I don't want this to get like hundreds of kilos of water down here. But basically, once there's enough steam in this room, I don't want any more water being brought in. 2,000 grams. Oh, okay, so it can process 2 kilos of steam at a time. That's not that much. That's not that much. I'm going to want a lot more steam in here. I'm going to want a lot more steam in here than 2,000 grams of it. Where's the Atmos sensor? I can have the Atmos sensor. It doesn't matter where the Atmos sensor is, I guess. I can have the Atmos sensor here, I suppose. In fact, I can have the Atmos sensor. I'll have the Atmos sensor above. So I don't necessarily want it to be low down because it might get blocked by liquids. And in that eventuality, that would be quite bad. But I will, just for the sake of making sure that this doesn't get awful, I'll put a hydro sensor in here as well. I'll have all of the wiring outside, I guess. But effectively, I want an OR gate. If the Atmos sensor is below a certain amount, or the... Oh, actually, no. Yeah, it's going to have to be an AND gate. An AND gate is what I need. The way this will work is if there isn't enough volume of gas in here, and there isn't so much water down here that I don't want any more added, then it will allow a liquid valve to be opened. And at that point, more water can be added to the system automatically. And then I never have to ever worry about having to come back in here again, because it'll take care of itself. Aavak, excuse me, sir. I'm not new to this, but, well, kind of never went past the mid-game. I do have a question. I know there are tutorials in YouTube, etc. What's the purpose of taming a gold volcano? Okay, well, first and foremost is the obvious one, is get free gold. Second one is the heat can be used. Quite often in taming, in any kind of taming, it's more often a case that you want the heat for something rather than you want the product. You're just using whatever it is that's generating the heat as a generator. You taming it is taking control of how it's generating it. By the way, Aavak, if you want to maintain access in the future steam room, you can do a double oil lock. Yeah, I know. I don't like using liquid locks, though. I mean, I could be... If I wanted to get back in here, I could make a dual flask. I could effectively, like, for as often as I would need to come in here, I could make a strict version of one of these. Like an absolutely strict version of it. It will never let someone in unless this room is a vacuum. Or let them out if it's a vacuum, or anything like that. But a dual flask is an easier way of doing it. In fact, a dual flask is actually quite good for heavy watt joint plates. If I used a dual flask instead of having conductive wire, I wouldn't need two of these. I would just have a heavy watt joint plate. Well, I'll quickly show you what I mean. For those of you who don't know what a dual flask is, I do apologize if I'm teaching my granny to suck eggs here. A dual flask is this. Hot thing in here. You out here probably, or cold thing for that matter. Complete vacuum in this. Insulation, probably, doesn't really matter at that point. The vacuum allows for no transfer of temperature. It is completely suspended. It's not connected in any way. It is a dual flask. There is a vacuum seal completely cocooning the internal chamber, where ridiculous temperatures, both cold and hot, can be going ham. You'll never notice that effect on the outside. So to make a dual flask, in this game is quite easy because, you know, you can actually have something completely not suspended by anything. In reality, unless you're using magnetism or some other kind of force like that, creating a field which is suspending the internal chamber. Oh, poop. Sorry. My bad. Don't do it. Unless you have some sort of field suspending the internal chamber, it's going to be touching something. And so, realistically, that thing is probably going to be made out of some ridiculously insulated material. So temperature transfer is incredibly slow. But that's the easiest way to allow this. And in this instance, what you do is you'd have something like that, and then something like this. Hot room over here. Everything else out here. You know, imagine this cavity is going all the way around. And then you'd pop heavy wire joint plate there, and then a wire connecting them, and a wire in there, wire out there. This heavy wire joint plate will get super hot because it's conducting the temperature through the insulated wall. But interestingly, wires do not conduct heat. Heat will not spread across a wire. So at that point, the heat stops. It's kind of a gamey system though, which is why I don't really do it. It's sort of abusing the fact that wires don't conduct heat when they probably should. Use the power of tea, the force that binds us all together. Yeah, exactly. You have enough tea around, and you just basically have tea coating the external wall. Because it's pulling the internal chamber in all directions at the same force, the internal chamber remains static in place. Hovering. Yep, that's exactly how it works. This is a top tip. Thank you, Aavak. Oh, you're more than welcome, Brutus. More than welcome, mate. Right, so we've got everything over here that we need. We now want a liquid shut-off. So, right there, I suspect. Is that in the right spot? Yes, hooray. Now we want some power as well. Where's the nearest power that I could hook up to? I could hook up to this one, actually. Yeah, sure. Okay. Actually, this is the nearest power that is extremely cheap to hook up to. So, tis this power that we will hook up to. Tunk. Because I'm going to be extremely cheap about it. There we go. Why are you so obsessed with making all the wires out of bloody aluminium? Game, you make me cry. Tears of frustration. Ugly cry out of frustration is what you do to me, game. Right, okay, I don't want more than 200 kilos of water down here at any one time. Actually, this should probably be over there. Well, 200 kilos, that water will pass around. I can always adjust this. You know what? 200 kilos. If it's below 200 kilos, then send a green signal. And if this is below, I don't know, 200, 2,000, no, 20,000, what do we want in here? Yeah, 20 kilos of steam. If it's below 20 kilos of steam and below 200 kilos of water, then this can turn on and allow water in. Now, the reason why I've got this outside I could easily just have these shut the vent, but then liquid would be in this pipe. Now, in this instance, it probably wouldn't be that much of a problem, but there would be a little bit of liquid behind this vent waiting to come in. That liquid would be getting hot, and eventually that liquid would burst into steam and burst the pipe and you know, cause a problem that I would then have to get inside to fix. So this way, any water that gets past this is getting into this area. One way or t'other, once it's past this valve, it's entering this system. It's just no more will enter after that. So the most we're going to have is like 40 extra kilos of water. Real dual flasks have silvered or mirrored internal walls to reduce the amount of infrared heat transfer. Yes, very good point, Industrious. Only doesn't model infrared heating or cooling at all. No, it doesn't. It has very, like, I think it only models one form that heat can transfer. Interesting note. I learned the English term for a dual flask when I was younger, and reading Akira. I watched Akira way too soon. I was really not old enough to watch Akira. Again, good old Blockbuster shutting down. However, that spurred my interest, and I used to read a fair bit of manga, just because of it was helpful for me to learn how to read English. I was interested in it. I also read a lot of fighting fantasy books by Games Workshop. Well, actually, was it by Games Workshop? No, it was by the people who made Games Workshop. Well, actually, no, it might have been by Games Workshop. I don't recall. But Ian Livingstone. Those were some of the first books that I really, really got into that helped me learn English. Because otherwise I was just learning it. Whereas that I was having fun learning it. But yeah, the dual flasks around the various bubbles that contained Akira in the manga. Because Akira isn't dead in the manga. It hasn't been chopped up into little bits in the manga. Akira is a little boy who's just sleeping because they've managed to basically lower the temperature to almost 0 Kelvin. And that's about almost enough to keep Akira in a slumber state. Almost. Akira's still kind of sensing things going on outside, just super tired. So, not really bothered. But yeah, it was like the scene where Tetsuo goes down and just breaks through all of the various dual flasks and the multiple levels leading into the facility that's storing Akira. And releases all of the cold and just literally flash freezes a bunch of scientists who get caught outside. And it's like, wow, what is this dual flask thing you're talking about? And so yeah, I was like, oh, that's what it is in English. I know what these things are. Vaguely. About 0 Kelvin, the temperature needed to keep Dark Aavak sleepy enough to not go on a rampage. No. Also, Pip, being in there is going to be super bad times for you. Could you please leave? I'm going to wait for the Pip to try and leave, and then I'm going to immediately put this down as a priority 9. Come on, this way. Okay, oh, come on now. Out. Go. Need it done now. Don't turn around. No, bye! Out. No. Go, quickly. No! Get out! If you get locked in, this way, good. Quickly! Dupes! Phew. Thank heavens. Dunk. Yeah, there we go. Right, get all of that done, and at this point, I can turn on the switch. Whoop. And we'll now start pulling all of that CO2 out of there. Yeah, the Pip was massively trolling me, yeah. Pips always do. Yeah, Fighting Fantasy books were written by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. Both were involved with Games Workshop in the 80s and or 90s sometime. Thank you very much, Mazd. I couldn't remember Steve Jackson's name. I feel really bad. Because I adore those books. I actually have several like collector's box sets of them. Not because I need to read play the games again, because I've played them so many times at this point. Just because I want to own them. It's like this was a formative part of my childhood. Literally, in many cases. Right, okay, so that is all set up. Once that is emptied out, I can shut that down, and that'll just turn off the gas pump, so we won't, get rid of any super hot steam, which would be super bad. Now, I want some clean water. I could put polluted water in there. Not really clever, though. If I put polluted water in there, I mean, it would work. But, right. We can just siphon off this water, though. If I put polluted water in there, the problem that would come is that the polluted water would have, flash into steam, but it would leave deposits of dirt in there. Now, you can actually set that up as a way of getting dirt by having like an auto sweeper in there, but you'd have to set it out of steel, and there's all the, stuff going on. And likewise, if you use salt water, if you have a salt water geyser, you can use it through this. Like, put the salt water in here, have an auto sweeper to grab the salt and dump it back outside. But instead of having the water from the steam turbine get dropped back in here, have that go somewhere else, and that's now your clean, desalinated water. Likewise, polluted water, that's now clean, germ-free water, because the germs don't survive the steam.